All right. So in the New Testament, out of 27 books, there is a location where they kind of slam the Gnostic ideology, and that was in 1 Timothy. In 6:20, it says, "O Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to you." I feel like I'm at Sunday school. "Avoid profane babbling and the absurdities of so-called knowledge." So I would say that was written after 325. All right. This is one, I don't think any of you guys were here for the overthinking. This is an example of perception. It's called social reality, and how strong a false fact can be picked up and believed as a fact. You can look at the political world today, you can look at the political world of the past, you can look at religion today, you can look at religion of the past. Basically, I like to say it's part of a collective psychosis, where people believe these things. All right. Now here's a teaser. Spiritual awakening available to all, yet few choose to take the first step. And the reason is it's difficult. Many people Sam and I were talking about this yesterday. No one in this room likes to be told. Does anyone like to be told what to do?
No, because you would dislike.
However, when it comes to spirituality, a lot of people do. So if you're somebody who likes to be told what to do, likes to be told where to be, likes to be told what to believe, then I would recommend you follow the orthodox path. And on Sunday at 10:45, you can be sitting your ass in a pew. Sunday evening at 6:30. On Monday night, visitation. At Wednesday night, another one. Because that's the path of the orthodox. See, it takes a lot of guts to deep dive within. Because one of the things you can learn about the Nag Hammadi, that is the only place you're going to find truth. All right. Spiritual knowledge cannot be taught or imposed. It must come from within. True salvation comes from within. Now, I did throw this up there, and it's funny because I threw it up there on one of the advertisements. Nobody even responded. This is out of the Gospel of Thomas. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what is within you will destroy you. All right. So I did me a little timeline, so now I'll forget things. I really will. All right. So 6 to 4 BC is when I put Jesus's birth. All right. It's not year 0. The reason we know that is King Herod died in 1 BC. So King Herod was alive and well when Jesus was born. All right. So I have 40 to 49 AD is roughly the time of Jesus' death. There's a scripture that says, how are ye yet of 50? That's the Pharisees talking to Jesus. So that tells you he was older than his early 30s. The church chose 33 for numerology purposes. All right. Because if not, it would not be that scripture. No one in their early 30s looks like they're pushing 50. So they would have said, how are ye yet of whatever? But instead they say, how are ye yet of 50? So it means had to have some age on it. All right. All right. So from that point on to around 312, you have 2 sects in Christianity. You have the Orthodox and you have the Gnostics. Roman fruit. One believes in a hierarchy, priest, and institution, and the power of Scripture. The other believes in none of that. They had people who went around teaching, but they weren't greater than you. You didn't refer to them as anything. They didn't mandate that you recite and quote scriptures. They sure as heck didn't talk about what the 4 Gospels talk about. None of the Gnostic writings will get into Jesus' birth, life, and death. That's for the Gospels. But how many times in the Bible it says Jesus took his disciples and taught them? And then it goes blank. Doesn't tell you what was taught. You can find those teachings in the Gnostic writings. All right. So you had two of these. And another big distinction between them is, what does it mean to be human? What does the world mean? Who was Jesus? And importantly, what in regards to salvation was required? All right. So in 312, during a lot of when Constantine was in power, there was a lot of there were other emperors, right? And so there was civil war throughout Rome. So in 312, the night before the battle at Milvian Bridge, Constantine saw a vision in the sky, and it was a cross. And he saw the words "In hoc signo vinces," which Latin to English means "in this sign you will conquer." So what happens the next day is Constantine defeats the other emperors, Maxentius, however you pronounce these damn names, which led to the Edict of Milan in 313, which is when Constantine deemed Christianity tolerable, not fully embraced, tolerable. So that allowed the sects to flourish. Two different views would pan out to represent not just theological differences, but different ways of perceiving reality, the divine, and the overall purpose of life. See, to the Orthodox, salvation was a historical, communal, and sacramental process. Humanity had fallen through sin, right? We're all born of sin. Now, technically, they're not wrong. It's just they're wrong in the way they define sin. Because the Gnostics will say we're born of ignorance. The original meaning of sin is to miss the mark. To miss the mark is literally ignorant. You're not getting it. Okay? And Gnosticism is not just Christian. For example, Seth in Jewish Gnosticism, Seth is the revealer. Zoroastrian, everything has a Gnosticism because, again, Gnostic means knowledge. Gnosis, which carries knowledge, is knowledge that comes from within. So think of it as it resonates with you. That's gnosis. Okay. All right. The church, in this aspect, serves as the body of Christ on earth. And they became the mediator of this grace. So then you got to ask yourself, because a lot of things we know were written after 325. For example, John 3:16, for God so beloved the world, he gave his only begotten son. Had to be written after 325 because it wasn't until the first Council of Nicaea that was identified. All right. Because if you read, like in the Gospel of Thomas, I'll paraphrase, Jesus says, I am not your master. I am just more awake. And I love it when he uses the word awake, because it immediately reminds me of the Sanskrit word for awaken or awakening, Buddha. All right. So we know how the rest of the story goes. So basically, faithfulness of the message, blind faith. That's what the Orthodox wants you to go by. Blind faith. Somebody in a suit and tie, somebody out there on a pulpit telling you what this means. That's the Orthodox way. So if you're somebody who doesn't like the challenge, then I would say, and you know what? There are a lot of great people who go to church. There really are. I like to use Yogananda's aspect when somebody asks about an atheist. But this atheist that they were telling about looked good upon humanity, did things for humanity. And again, I'm paraphrasing, because again, I haven't Texas education. We knew George W. Bush, 8 years in the White House, would make up words, but you always understood what he said. So I refer to that when I start paraphrasing. That the divine does not listen to the spoken word. the divine listens to the words of the heart. So in other words, the so-called atheist was closer to God than many people who follow the Orthodox path. That's just what he was referencing. Just because someone says there's an atheist doesn't mean that they aren't close to the divine, because their heart is the language the divine listens to. All right. See, the Gnostics had a totally different view of the Orthodox. Human crisis was not simply moral failure, as the church would have you believe. It was just simple ignorance. Remembering who you are. It's a forgetfulness of our divine heritage. See, that's when the church had to come around and say that's blasphemy. But I always tell people, let's use common sense. If you have the DNA of your mom and dad in every incarnation, and your children have the DNA of you and the other parental part, why is it you don't have the spiritual DNA of the divine? We're literally the cosmos wrapped in a frame, a body, right? And so that's the way the Gnostics viewed this. All right. So the soul became trapped in the material world. Have you all ever heard of the story of the Pisces Sophia? All right. They're part of aeons, and aeons are in the pleroma. Pleroma is fullness. And that's what we believe the Gnostics believe first thought, or the true divine resides. And so in the aeons, we all have masculine and feminine. The aeons are made up of masculine and feminine. Sophia had a thought. She had the thought without the male counterpart, without Pisces. Realizing there was imbalance, she tossed the thought out of the pleroma into chaos. The chaos in that energy created what they called the demiurge, a lesser, ignorant, arrogant, self-serving God. And they believe it's that God that created this universe, and that you are just, your soul is in exile. That's what they believe. And it was sparked from the pleroma that served the serpent in the myth of the Garden of Eden, because it freed humanity. And if the all-knowing was really all-knowing, why then would he have to say, and I say he, because again, it was a patriarchal society. Why would he have to say, Adam, where art thou? If you're all-knowing, A, you would have known the shit was going to happen. B, you know where Adam is, right? But another thing the Gnostics have that totally goes against the Orthodox is the Gnostics have the divine feminine. As Jesus said, male and female are equally spiritual. So you have Sophia, wisdom, who is a big part of the Gnostic path. And you have Mary Magdalene, who is also a big part of the path. But if you grew up like I did in Southern Baptist, and I think they may have changed it now, Mary was a prostitute. Unworthy, right? Which is untrue. See, women are, I don't want to say demonized by a lot of the Abrahamic religions. I'll let you use that word. But if you look at Judaism, Christianity, and Muslim, you tell me if women actually are equal. But to Jesus, you were, because you are. So you already see there's a huge split. So so again, we talked about the demiurges. And here's a big thing. Salvation is not wrapped around the forgiveness of sin. It's not. As Eckhart Tolle taught me, and I like to share, is there is nothing ever for you to forgive. Now, granted, you can make atonement. And we're at a very transcendent level there, or a deep level, depending on how you look at it. The reason is, for example, Jesus is on the cross. He said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Romans were awake, so they were conscious, right? At least physically. They had done crucifixions before. They kept meticulous records of this, so they knew exactly what they were doing. It's a reference to their act was an unconscious act. That's all he was referencing. Forgive them for they know what they do, because their act is unconscious. So that's why if you think of it from a very deep level or transcendent level, there is nothing ever to forgive from anyone. Yes, ma'am.
I just got lost in sauce. Their act was unconscious. How is that possible?
All right. You drive home every day. You drive the same route most of the time.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Even driving becomes very rote.
And do you ever like when I drive home, there's always, I know where the 5-star is at, right? But I don't always acknowledge every time I drive it. Kind of like an autopilot.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of like you breathe. But when you consciously breathe, you center and ground.
Okay.
And you can do that with blinking. And you unconsciously breathe, we unconsciously blink. It's just part of being human. It's when you consciously do something. It's that connection.
Okay.
And so what he's referencing is their act was unconscious.
So they were just crucifying.
They were just doing their job.
Just doing
It's kind of like when you're driving and you're like an autopilot. You don't, some days you'll realize you passed the 5-star, sometimes you don't,
Yeah.
but you still want to buy it.
Another example would be the Nazis at the concentration camps.
Yeah.
The guards.
Right. Those were unconscious acts.
Nice.
And so, but the way the Orthodox would look at it is, I love it because there's 2 gods in the Bible. And a lot of them want to refer to the Old Testament. Vengeance, revenge, right? Which, oh, by the way, the minute that Christianity became accepted by Rome, they started treating the pagans worse than they had been treated, which is total opposite of the message of Jesus. And it's total opposite of the Gnostic message, right? And like for 434, they disrobed and dismembered and burned Hypatia. And she was one of the only female instructors at the School of Alexandria. Her father was actually the last mathematician there. And then, believe it or not, the church then sainted the guy behind it. But that's not part of the story. All right. Salvation. Okay, we're talking not about forgiveness of sin. It's about awakening from the illusion. And what I love about that is if you were in the class where we talked about Bhagavad Gita, there are 2 elements to this realm: spirit and illusion, or they call it mind. So when you start reading these things, especially the overview, which, oh, by the way, because I did promise someone I would show, I get a lot of my information for this class from the Lost Secrets of Nag Hammadi. So there's my reference. So it talks about illusion. It's an inner realization. That's why I'm always talking about self-realization. Okay. Now, Sam and I were talking about this day. Sometimes she'll let somebody bite my tongue because, but I'm going to throw even the records in. Now, this is not my saying. The Gnostics believe, because I told you about the demiurge, and then the demiurge created what we call archons. Angels, archons, I don't know. And then archons created things like astrology. They created things to enslave us into this realm. Now, I don't look at it that drastic, even though when someone does it, Sam is a witness. Shelley tells me, shh, because I like to say, as both Jesus and Krishna said, be in this world, not of this world. Because another place in Thomas, when the students asked Jesus, where do we say we came from? You did not come from your mother. You did not come from your father. You tell them you came from the light. So the light, i.e. pleroma, is beyond this. In Chinese cosmology, they refer to as a hidden universe, which I honestly think it's like behind a black hole somewhere, because we don't have the technology to get there. All right. So, but Gnosis was not mediated by or through a priest or an institution. People, the only one that can tell you truth is you. So if it is a challenge, then maybe the Orthodox path is best for you if you want to follow the Christian section. Because that's why it said, few choose to take the first step. Because for some reason, and well, it's because we've been programmed, we don't believe in ourselves or fear. What if I'm wrong? Yeah.
So I just thought about this. So, man, I'm just gonna say this. I'm not trying to come on attack anybody's religion, but when you say like if they want to choose that path, right? And as to me, it's kind of like a lot of those people are choosing that path, saying unconscious.
Yeah.
They're kind of going through the motions of everything that's being taught on the Orthodox way, right? So once you get awakened, that's when you start asking questions and looking for answers because you're not gonna find the answers over here.
Right.
So once you get awakening, that's basically like people like us. We're trying to find like what is the answers in our own way, and we start basically veering from that type of guidance.
Correct.
Yeah.
So like almost like being pre-programmed.
Yes.
Not realizing
Well, and in fairness,
pre-programmed right now.
exactly. And in fairness, you probably had, or if you're really dying to know, go with Sam. How many incarnations did you have between 325 and now? Right. And so how many times, and it's not, I meant when it falls into Christian, and it doesn't mean that you're, a Christian or anything. But my point is look how much programming it is harder to unlearn what you've learned than to learn something new. But here's the thing. You guys, like when you're packing for a trip, you have certain things over here you really want to take, but you notice your suitcase is full. To put anything new in the suitcase, put anything new into your awareness, you have to pull shit out. So it's almost like you got to empty it to fill it. And that is difficult. That's why few choose that, because it really is hard. And it doesn't mean, and like we were saying earlier, there are a lot of good people who do go to church and follow that path. It's not a slam on that. This is just a comparison contrast of Gnosticism, Gnostic ideology, and the Christian path, and the Orthodox Church. That's all it is.
Like you said, in the Gnostic writing, it says women and men are both spiritual.
Yes, equally
In the
spiritual.
Bible, the way I always see it is that the spiritual person is always the male figure. Even when in the garden, when they both basically were, to me, they both were responsible about eating the forbidden fruit. But at the end of the day, Adam was the one that was basically, he was responsible. Because they said that he should have known better. But they both should have been responsible.
Well, you got the harsh punishment though.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is the Bible, it's always the men are always responsible. That's why it's the man is the head of the house, the man is this, the man is that. So it's that you could tell in the Bible that a lot of the women are like pushed aside.
What's also interesting is if you study the early ministry of Christ, he had to live, right? How do you travel around? His ministry was funded by women. Women funded his ministry, funded his ability to travel around. That is historical. And so I have always taken that was of course it's different for me than it would be for you because I am a woman, right? That was the real thing that growing up my entire life, I always had the hugest problem with. I'm like, why am I less worthy? That doesn't make sense to me. But then as you peel back the layers, then you're not. And so then that just turns the whole
It's
thing
because
on
we've
its head.
been, as a society, we've been brainwashed. We've this book that everybody, it's basically is theirs and indoctrinized. This book is setting the ways, right, for like whenever it was created. It's setting the ways to treat women this way, and men are more powerful than women, even though through histories we know that there's been a lot of women that are way more powerful than men. but the book is basically setting the way even today. And yeah, I'm not a woman, but I have 3 daughters and I have 3 granddaughters. And I come from a family where like 70% is women that that basically rule the family. So like the males don't really have that much to say. So it's to me, and that was one of the things I never agreed with the Bible. Like, why is all these women are even married? Like, it's like, you're not important, right? It's to me, I never understood that.
Can I add?
Yeah.
I'm seeing two different. I never thought about this one before. But the delusion of power and the delusion of weaker sex fights against each other instead of enabling both to be in their fullest form is the way they should be. So you have men who are overpressurized because of this responsibility that's on their shoulder, and we have women who feel unempowered and captured somehow. And both works against the other instead of harmony and peace being in place. And even Jesus talked a lot about peace. So I see it both, and I've never really considered both at the same time until right now.
And it's because
How
of
about that?
it's because of, to me, it's because of the Bible.
Well,
It's like,
yeah.
you're the man of the house, you need to take care of
Yeah.
this. And you're like, I don't need to take care of this. My sister could do it.
Mhm.
And then they would look at me like,
That's
just
just like
can't
in the whole society.
I'm like,
Brand as
well,
well.
she does it better. So to me, that's the way we are. Like, we're like, if she could do it, go ahead. I don't care. But in society, it's like, man, he just gave you a manhood. I'm like, but my manhood is fine. Like, I don't care what you said. But that's the way the society is. And I never understood that. That's why I was brought up in a Christian and Catholic family. But after a while, I started like kind of just, I'm still consider myself a Christian, but now I have like different belief now. Like, not all of this is right to me. So that's why I kind of like look at different ways, because there's no way that male and female, one or the other, is gonna be in like less than the other.
Right. It's
That's
50% one way. or
But the
other.
Bible, if you read it, and I read it many times, that's
Yeah.
you get that through the whole entire.
Are we just souls
I'm
having
not-
a human
I'm not
experience?
making-
I mean, why is this identity that we all get caught up? Is that just a distraction to keep us?
Because the Nazi would say you're in
Trapped.
you're in exile.
Yeah. So when people get hung up with men, women, black, white, isn't that keeping us trapped in this system? You know. So.
But you know what you guys just did? You had a moment of gnosis. You had a moment of internal truth. Because, granted, we could take the same idea, go to that coffee church across the street, and we would have hundreds, if not thousands, disagree with everything we just said. But you guys came up with your own truth, and that's gnosis. Because you're right. Everything you guys said, from what you said to what you guys, is all true. That's why I showed that one perception thing of reality. Because the Dalai Lama put it perfect. If you believe it's true, it's true.
Yeah.
Because from a Gnostic point of view, the only one that can tell you truth is you. Right? So the one thing they talk about, in this way, you could constantly return to the pleroma, the fullness of the divine. And Jesus was not primarily a savior through sacrifice, but a revealer of hidden truth. See, the Orthodox Church is what we call the Redeemer complex, right? And what's funny is there in the early church, they said if anything in these writings were ever deemed false, right, then the whole thing would fall apart. And yet we know, for example, the birth we know was not in December. We know that there were other sun gods. We know that Mary was not the first virgin that just got pregnant.
Well, and even there's the current translations say that
Right.
a virgin birth, like that word didn't normally mean virgin, the original translated version. It just meant young woman. And so, but the virgin birth help fulfill prophecy from the Old Testament. So they chose the translation of it, even though in the actual context, that's probably not what it meant.
Right.
Current biblical scholars say that.
Because look it up. I think Alexander the Great was also apparently
We know that Jesus' name was not Jesus.
Because it Jake.
All right.
Yeah, Jesus' name is.
So in other words, Jesus to them was a spiritual liberator, not a sacrificial lamb. All right. So you can see how these two start to clash. The entire Gnostic view challenges you to take an inward journey, and it's a spiral. But that's where you're going to find your truth. So now we've got, civil wars still continue after 312. So in 324, Constantine defeats Emperor Licinius and becomes sole emperor of Rome. Now, after decades of all this muckery, chaos, now, there is debate from scholars, did Constantine ever convert? And we know his mom did. That's how we got a lot of sacred. It's funny, you got a lot of these holy sites in the Middle East because of Constantine's mom. She identified. But, so you can see from a Roman standpoint, one ruler, one nation, one religion. Because for these hundreds of years, you had basically two sects. You had the Gnostics and you had the Orthodox. So, in 325, Emperor Constantine called the first, and the first six were actually called by emperors. First council, and it was in Nicaea. And that's where everything really goes crazy. All right. Everyone's seen The Matrix, right? Do you know that's a Gnostic movie?
It's the Matrix.
Yeah, the plot of it.
The whole plot. And then the third one, whatever, when he falls back, it's all symbolism. Because the Gnostic writings are written in symbolism, mysticism. That's how Jesus spoke in parables. Because if I tell you A, B, and C, and you can recite that, oh yeah, you got knowledge, but you lack wisdom. And so things are spoken like that, so you can decipher what is being said, not somebody telling you what is being said. So earlier I was talking about the demiurge, astrology and all. I like to look at them, even the records. They're keys. Because Copernicus put it best. Nobody can teach you anything. They can only open up doors for you to remember. Now, there's a key word in Gnosticism. Remember. Because you literally, truly are born with all the knowledge you ever need. You got the entire galactic universes, the omniverse of knowledge all within you. It's the ignorance keeping it away. That's all they're saying. Okay. So now you can see, and then there's also, and again, even if you were raised Baptist, okay, and the Baptists or the Protestants give all this credit to Martin Luther, they actually should give it to Henry VIII. Both born around the same time. Because Henry VIII broke away from the church because the Pope would not grant him a divorce.
Yeah.
So he created the Church of England. So there you got your break. The only thing that they did is that, they didn't keep it, contained like Catholics. And so you have a bunch of sects run off from that. But the whole point is that there are many Protestants who don't believe Catholics are Christian. That's not.
It is based in another way too.
Right. But what's funny is the Protestants forget Martin Luther's 95 Theses. Over 95% of their entire foundation is based in Catholicism and the councils.
Yeah.
So this council, you had a lot happening. Only 27 books were chosen. Right? 27. But now you can see kind of. We'll get more into it throughout, but you get an idea of why the Gnostic writings were so dangerous. See, people don't understand that when Rome embraced Christianity, Christianity embraced Rome. Literally. So obviously, and we'll revert back to that in a bit, there was a reason that these books had to be banned. They were supposed to be burned and destroyed. Luckily, there are some smart people. Because not only did the Gnostics take, Jesus' teaching, they pulled from Plato. They pulled from Hermes. They pulled from Kabbalah. They pulled from the Egyptian religions. Because there's truth. I don't know if they pull from Confucius. But if you look at it, because what they're doing is things, because we talk in esoteric philosophy, if you take away all the shit that man's put in religions, you'll find that they all have the same underlying things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it was brilliant that they were able to pull from these. And the only reason I don't know is I don't know if the East was open yet. But for example, the Gnostics refer to God as the All, which is very similar to the Taoist. We refer to it as the Tao, which means you cannot name it. You can't give it human characteristics. It's more than that. But thank goodness, in December of 1945, these brothers, a local farmer, Muhammad al-Saman, and his brothers were looking for fertilizer. As they're doing this, they come upon a old ceramic type jar. Okay. It was sealed. So initially, fear ran through their minds. Because, have you ever heard of jinns?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So they thought maybe an evil spirit had been locked in this jar and put away. But then they started thinking of the opposite, riches. What if there's old coins in here or something? I mean, it's tightly packed. They knew there was weight to it. They didn't know what was in it. So they finally busted it open. And what they got was filled with codices of ancient pages of Coptic script. All right. So Coptic alphabet is a variation of Greek containing a number of extra letters and sounds not found in traditional Greek. The extra letters came from the demotic form of the Egyptian script. It goes back to the 3rd BC when Greek conquered Egypt. Okay. Because the actual word Coptic is from the Greek word for Egyptian. But they still had no idea what they had found. So until this, and this is what's important, really, until this was almost like the birthing. It's only been in the last maybe 30 years, 3 decades. Until this, the church controlled the view of Gnosticism. That's what we know about the Gnostics. And obviously, you knew they didn't like them because in their belief, you didn't need a hierarchy. You didn't need the middleman, which the church serves as. So you can see why, right? Because at the first council, you had a group they called Arians, not to be confused with Gnostics, because Arius was a Gnostic. All these writings in the Nag Hammadi library, to include the Gospel of Mary, which Mary was actually not part of the Nag Hammadi. Mary was found in 1896 in Cairo on the riverbank. But it's a Gnostic writing, so it gets put into a lot of the Nag Hammadi. All right. Before this, our entire view for 1700 plus years was what the church, modern Christianity, deemed about Gnosticism. And it wasn't good.
No.
Yes, ma'am.
To add on to that, because I've Protestant-wise have been in many, many studies of New Testament Pauline writing. A lot of folks translate or interpret Paul's views against what do they call them, heretics, or the people in the communities that were speaking against what Christ truly meant were Gnostics.
Uh-huh.
And that's all they do was based upon what Paul was describing in New Testament scripture as to what they would believe and be preaching the false gospel.
You know, it's so
False
funny
gospel.
about Paul. Yes.
Yeah, I go ahead and I'll.
Did Paul ever meet the physical Jesus?
Nope.
He had a mystic experience.
Mhm.
There is a theory that Paul was Gnostic, but he was also very smart. If he would have came out as that, obviously he would not be where we wouldn't have what we have today. He had a mystical meeting with Jesus, right?
I was only going to talk about the Gnostics, or you were talking about the council.
Mhm.
And I was just going to mention too that I think one of the big things to keep in mind, not only was it called the first six were they called by emperors, but when all these people are sitting at the table, the ones who had the most backing, and that doesn't necessarily mean religious authority. We're talking like money and powerful followers. Like if you had a big governor who really promoted this idea over this one and they had a lot of influence, then that affected what books got to stay on the table and what books got pulled off. And I think that, I mean, because people, at least when I grew up, there's this idea that the church is, or pardon me, that the Bible is specifically God spoke and man doesn't have a hand in it.
Yeah.
It's not just that man had a hand in it, but power had a hand in it. Not even that just the institution of the church, but you're talking power from all these different places.
Mhm.
And I feel like that gets glossed over or completely
I think
missed.
it says like power, money, and control.
Yes.
Because that power was basically governing everything, wars and all these things, expeditions, and they were controlling everything. So they needed the power and they needed the money.
So it sounds right, though. That's actually in it.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Again.
Because if you had the backing of the people, and again, look at those writings. Just look at the Gospel of Thomas, where it clearly states the man was not about an organized church. But if you had the backings, because again, decades of civil war, obedience, the books, so you had the backing, those got in there. There was violence and murder at these councils. Very godly like, right?
Old Testament.
Old Testament, very much old, yes. But so yeah, they were all deemed as heresy. And oh, by the way, in 555, see, after all this, the early church did teach reincarnation. There was another emperor, Justinian. His wife, Theolona, wanted to be deitized like the Egyptian goddesses. And to do that, you can't really have reincarnation. So at that council in 555, reincarnation no longer existed. But he goes a little bit further. He goes back to Origen, one of the early church fathers' writings, deemed him, because Origen believed in reincarnation, also believed in some of the Gnostic writings. And because of this emperor in 555 labeled Origen and his writings as a heretic and his writings as heresy. And there's a man of God for you, an emperor. But they won't talk about that on a Sunday. All right. So to be clear, these texts were condemned, banned, and branded as heresy. The writings describe a different Jesus, one who did not die to appease an angry God, but one who came to awaken divine knowledge. I say to you, as I say to all, stay awake. It's a quote of Jesus. I already told you what awake references. It's a reference of Buddha. Buddhists, now, not the person, but the ideology. Buddhists go within, right? They actually have what they call the primordial Buddha. So I told the one Buddha guy that comes in, well, that must be the definition of God for you, because I know if you got a primordial, right? But we're not labeling things. But I love that because, again, and in the late 50s, a DJ tried to stay awake. And after 200 hours on the radio, he started having hallucinations of burning and fires and murder and violence. So obviously, Jesus was not saying stay awake, meaning never sleep. Stay conscious.
Yeah.
And that's what these teach you. So these teachings says, do not ask for obedience. They ask for presence. That's why I recommended when you deep dive into these, maybe ground yourself before you start reading them. So It's the knowing, not as information, but the revelation. You can't read them as you would read any other story, right? Because it's not a linear journey, but a spiral. It's deep within.
So also like when you said he died, uh, this to me, like they always said that he died because of our sins.
Right.
And to me, is he died because the Romans killed him because he was basically he was getting these followers, and he was changing the perspective of everybody around him.
And
So-
this idea of being
It-
king
yeah,
of the Jews
and then
was
that-
a threat.
Yeah, and that's what they put out there. He wasn't labeled that.
Yeah.
So they killed him because the threat. He was
Okay.
You know, so to me, it's like he didn't die for our sins. He was basically murdered.
That's very institutionalized of you. It wasn't the Romans. Pilate washed his hands. It was the Pharisees. It was the Jews.
They did for the
They wanted him dead.
Yeah.
That's Pilate. He had no dog in the fight. That's why he washed his hands. He was like, okay, you're choosing. Now, granted, it'll all be part of prophecy.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, at this time, not only in the West, but also in the East, they were looking for an avatar. Hence, the Magi in two of the Gospels attended the birth, and the other two, they were shepherds. And I always tell people, you'll never confuse a Magi with a shepherd. You won't.
But they always use that to kind of like control us now.
No, they do. And then because it's fear,
Yeah.
right? Because what if you're wrong? You got eternity in hell. So you're taught that you're loved unconditionally. And you have two choices. But if you do one choice, you're damned forever. To me, that's conditional. That's not unconditional.
Yeah.
Right? See, who decided the books? That's where we were going to get. So
Sorry.
no, you're right. She's right though, because there was politics. And if you had the backing of powerful people, it got accepted. You know, there's a joke that's like they just took all these and just threw them up, and whichever one's landed on a table made it. All right. The other question, because when you're dealing into this, it opens up questions that have long been lost in thought and literally until 1945 or some, give them 20 years. But what's funny is all these codices, some we will never get because, they did sell some that who knows who. Luckily, smart people came across with the black market from museums. One of the codices, which has like 4 of the books, was actually purchased by the Carl Jung Institution in 1951. And then the others by museums. And I always tell you this when we're talking about Gnosticism. Have you ever watched the movie Stigmata? Did you watch it?
I did. Oh,
Okay.
I saw that.
I did watch it.
So you think it's about Stigmata, but the underlying theme is the Gospel of Thomas.
It was so interesting and at the same time disturbing.
So you caught some of the things the bishop was saying
Yes.
about control.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so was there more ways to understand Jesus? Yes.
Okay.
And then,
I
yes.
was lost over it. I think it's in here.
Yeah.
Some of the codices are lost permanently because they burned.
Yeah, there's a whole, there is a deep dive. There is some
The
illiteracy.
mother was burning.
Yeah, there was some burning. There was some thievery. There was some just selling to people that, may have known what they were getting, may not. She's right. So they'll be gone. But that's okay. We've got a good collection. And what I love this is you can even take a Gnostic view and read the King James and still pull out of it because you're not reading it literally. All right. And then is salvation something to be received passively or something to be awakened within? All right. Because this one I understood. Okay. So 4-year-old in the Amazon gets attacked and eaten by an alligator. According to Christianity, although they may have footnotes or little asterisks, that 4-year-old in the Amazon, that Amazonian little child never heard the name Jesus. So you get one shot at this life. And in their view, that little 4-year-old is damned to eternity in hell. See, people, we're coming to a point that we should be getting more educated. And I don't understand why those type of questions aren't asked. Well, then they may say, oh, well, God takes care of us. Because, Jesus loves the little children in the world, red and yellow, black and white. Not by citizenship, by sexual orientation. Ask someone who is against certain things. Does your God make a mistake? And they'll say no. That makes no sense. So what knowledge we have forgotten or been taught to forget? Because again, this is a very empowering trip. And if you're not up for it, don't worry about it. Trust me. I told Sam, out of all the books I have, there's 2 categories that by far lead them all. And no, it's not the Bhagavad Gita, though I do have several. It's extraterrestrial and Gnosticism. For some reason, I'm fascinated with Gnosticism. And it wasn't until I started prepping for this class that I actually learned how to read the damn things. Because I would try to read them literally.
Hmm.
I'm like,
So you were trained.
shit. Yeah, bingo. I was programmed and I wasn't. Exactly. I was programmed that way. Because remember, not everything lost is meant to stay buried. Not everything that is hidden was meant to be forgotten. As Jesus said, what is hidden shall be revealed. Now, I mean, we'll get to that later.
When you say that everything's hidden to be revealed, and I think it's a constant thing that they're trying to keep it hidden from us because it's still under control. Even in seminaries, that's what they're taught, and that they're not going to answer the questions that they want to know because that's what they're taught.
Right. But here's the beautiful thing. It doesn't fucking matter what I believe. It only matters what you believe. For you. Seriously. And that's English. I would say pardon my French, but that's an English word. It doesn't matter what. So you can find your own inner peace, your own Eden within you because it's there. Think of it this way. When I was teaching the record, sometimes it comes up. You ever seen a diamond mill from a bird's eye view? It goes in a funnel shape, because they dug. And then you can see the different layers of dirt. And so I always use those layers of dirt that you can see the lines as incarnations. Right? And then the diamonds are down in there near the mill, and it's all muddy, mucky water. It's just nasty. They pull out a rock and they're chipping away at this rock, and boom, there's the diamond, which was always there. Now, granted, it took many years to process. Don't get too technical. The point is the light is within everyone. It's like the human being dimension, right? Present is always within you and in your grasp. It's not outside of you. All right. All right. So by the end of the 4th century, Christianity had gone from a movement of mystics and outcasts to an institution of empire. I love that. Institution of empire. Politics. When it became political, it was weaponized. Now look throughout history. The Crusades, the Inquisition, the idiots up there saying they wanted to attack Iran and create Armageddon. It's weaponized. All right. A new version of Christianity was shaped. One that valued uniformity over diversity, obedience over inner experience, and authority over personal revelation. Were you ever in a church and a Sunday school and try to ask questions? Did they ever get answered?
No.
Not well.
Not well. All right. And again, quote Jesus, be as little children.
Yes.
Got to have faith.
Gotta have
That's a
faith.
blind faith, which Gnosticisms don't go for.
Yeah.
Do not accept blind faith. And if Jesus says, be as little children, what do little children do?
Ask
Yeah.
questions.
Exactly, because they're curious about everything. So why do you get shut down? Okay, I don't know. So the Gnostics were different. They spoke of a Christ who awakens rather than saves, a God beyond names and form. And that's why I correlate it to the Taoist, the Tao. It's unnameable. A truth that must be known directly, not blindly, not mediated by priests or ruled by fear. They empowered the individual to look within, to remember the spark of the divine was not in temples or hierarchies. It was already within you. You do not need, that's what cracks me up about these people who still fight over sacred land. Right? Because it's like, okay, well, if you get technical on why they're fighting, well, to use their version, something to do with their religion, right? But who created the planet? Source. Or they would say God. Well, then why isn't it all sacred? Because man and their ego. See, if
If we
Christians,
called it all sacred, we have to take care of it as such.
if Christians would, now here's, hopefully I get a brownie point back. If the early Christians would have embraced the divine feminine and had some feminine viewpoints of things, maybe it wouldn't be so dark. I mean, really. Because there is that true saying, behind every great man is a greater woman. Somebody's leading them.
Well, come into an existence.
Hey, don't say young, because you've been a man before. No gender pointing, no gender pointing. But you know what I mean? If you think about it, but it became weaponized. All right. But the whole point with this is they're telling you everything is already within you. You don't have to go to a building. You don't have to have someone touch your head and bless you and put holy water on it. You don't have to be dunked in the water, although that's also symbolic. Yes.
And you were talking about, you don't have to go to a building, you don't have to do all this stuff. And what is amazing to me, you talk about being able to still read the King James Version. Well, what do they say about prayer? What doesn't the New Testament say about prayer? Like, you should be by yourself. You shouldn't be praying in public. Go into the closet to pray. And so it's so counter to what the church actually offers. And then not just the church, but the movement as a whole, particularly here in America.
No, you're right. No, keep going. That was it?
No, I was just going to say, like we're saying that's all within, and it's
You're right.
very personal. And even that is in the Bible, but it's completely lost.
Because, and it's Jesus
Mhm.
who says, do not be like the Pharisees.
Go in your closet, is what it says.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Pharisees are the ones that are doing all the holy shit in front of everybody. I donated.
Just
Pat me on the back.
No, what she was saying, I was just gonna say, like, even from being really, really young, I always felt like any organized religion was just contradicted everything that they made you feel in God. Like, if you do this wrong, you're going to hell. If you do that wrong, you're going to hell, but at the same time, they preach about this loving, unconditionally loving God that loves all his children and wants all of his children to succeed and end up in heaven. But they put this fear in you
Yeah.
to make you afraid of this person who is supposed to love you unconditionally. So I remember thinking that we grew up Lutheran, and my grandparents were big. We always went to church, on Sundays for holidays. And I always hated it because I always felt like, even little, always felt like yes, like it didn't feel right. It felt like I was terrified to do something wrong. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, especially when I got to adulthood and had kids, I'm like, what we're taught is not how I love my kids. For them to be afraid of me, to fear me of doing the wrong thing, or I won't love them anymore and send them to hell. And
No,
that's,
it's true.
and
You know what Josh Harden's mom told us? This man all the time. If Nick didn't finish his homework, beat him. Put a timer.
That she told you that.
Put a timer on.
Yeah.
But you're right. And yet, how many of you heard the highway to hell is paved with good intentions?
Mm-hmm.
That's another good Christian comeback. See, that's why I love talking about this, and I love debating it with other people who may not believe like I do, because I know exactly the angle they're going to approach me at, because I once was them.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, you can see clearly the church's power structure was not inspirational, but insurrectional, which means militant. I think. Yeah. And not much has changed.
I think you think about it too, with all what they're doing, they're making you think fear-based, and you're creating hell on earth right now in your mind anyway. So
And again, and you're right. And I just want to make another note. This is not just slamming Christianity. That Gnosticism exists in other religions because it's all about the revealer. It's just we're in the West, we're in Kentucky. Let's just address what's in front of us. Well, of course, but I'm addressing it to a room that all agrees the same thing. Because you see now you can see why these writings were not conducive with the direction the church wanted to go. And the church was going in the direction Rome wanted them to go. Because the Gospel of Thomas is beautifully written. Confusing as hell, but beautifully written. Because I'm paraphrasing, I think the first one is for those who understand these words will never taste death. Because again, the physical body's going to die. That's not what's in reference to. But today, information is just available to you constantly. Scroll, boom, boom. But you know what? You know what you're missing? You know why you always go through things and still don't fulfill? It's the wisdom. Sam, I know you know this. What is the longest journey you will take in any lifetime?
From your head to your heart.
From knowledge to wisdom. And the whole Gnostic approach is getting wisdom. And the only one that can give you wisdom is your own awakening. I liked, and Sandra, what is this? I love the debate, especially with Lord's guys, because I don't understand them. And I told him, I said, I'm not trying to convince you to believe what I believe. But I will spend all day throwing questions at you for you to question what you believe. And at the end of the day, if you still believe it, that's great. That is not for me to judge. But we blindly take this faith and we roll with it. And I even try to ask them. All right. So when you have your Norse deities, there's a lot of human aspects to it, isn't there? Oh, yeah. And I was like, do you really think a celestial being would have the human attributes? Now, the demiurge did. He was a jealous god. Hence, there shall be no other gods before me. Well, if you went to my ET class, no, you've been out. You're good. All right. So you see, it's the connection that's missing. I love the last one. We hear many voices, yet we often silence our own. Because your voice for you is the only freaking one that matters. Yours for you. You can't continue to look exterior for anything. That's why I think this store, the records, astrology, tarot, they're keys, but they're not the answer. You can only find the answer within you. Hence your free will. All right. So these texts offer a way to reconnect with sacred without leaving yourself behind. Now, my lesson in doing all of this is that I have to understand and realize that everyone comes to these things on their own. And I get frustrated because I've been the Bible guy. I've been the guy who went down a lot of rabbit holes metaphysically. I got a lot of things I became certified in, which I don't do. Emotion code's one. Reiki's no, I don't do them. Early on, I really somehow, I don't know why. I think it's because, I was younger, I thought I was going to be a preacher. My brother took that. Thank God I went military. My grandma thought I was going to be the preacher. But to me, self-realization is the most important thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just, maybe I'd be good with Sam. Maybe I've had too many damn incarnations on this rock. And I'm just ready to go, which I know I still got a few more. I mean, like I always tell people, eternity is not a long time, it's timeless. So I might have a few hundred more trips down here, which is pretty cool. Think about it. Anyway, sorry. Unless my next incarnation is like, maybe my next incarnation will be at 325. Because there's a theory incarnation is not sequential. It's only the human ego that thinks linear. Spirituality is like,
So you can be reborn and then go back to each one.
Yeah. Because if you're working on the theory is if you're working on something, right, and that something may be more opportune for you in say 325, your next incarnation is what we would call 325, the year 325.
What we need.
It's like different timelines. You know, it's kind of like in the quantum world, superpositioning is where one molecule exists on multiple timelines. So like I always say, we're fractals of one. Who's to say we're not all just one molecule? And so there's that theory or incarnation that you know, it's just,
We invent time.
we invented time.
Yes.
Yes.
So one of the things that always fascinated me, because it happens to me all the time, is like when you have deja vu.
Mhm.
Like, what do you believe that is? Do you think that's
There's a theory.
Okay.
Because before each carnation, you kind of, now here's the theory. I'm not saying, you know, it's gospel. You create an outline what you want to do.
Right.
All right. But you're born into ignorance. All right. There's a saying, you know, another thing Jesus referenced, and there is it when we deep dive in the Gospel of Thomas, there is a reference to it where the old man is asking a young child something and they can gain wisdom because you're never as smart as the day you're born. Because the day you're born, you're still connected. You haven't been programmed yet. And then Ruiz, Fort Gurns likes to teach, it's when we start to learn language, the programming, or they call it domestication, starts. Because you start to learn what word mean, and words are symbolic, right? Good little boys, good little girls don't do that. So in your mind, you're programmed, if I do that, I'm not good. Right? So once you start to learn language, that's why if you ever want to ask a kid, like you know, Ramon would be a good one, maybe in a year. Ask them if they ever remember being big. Because when we did our reincarnation podcast, a lot of the research is kids around 5, 6, and 7 that still remember previous lives. And so the reason that's saying is you're never as far as the day you're born because you haven't been programmed.
I think that answers your question.
Oh, what was the question?
Deja vu.
Oh, so you have a roadmap. All right. So in that, a deja vu could be, it's a hint.
checkpoints?
And focus on what's happening right before and after. Because it's almost as if you've created your own IV checkpoint.
That's what
That when you come across this,
feel like
there's something about that you want to address is approaching. So it kind of gives you that awareness. Sorry, I forgot.
it's okay.
See, that's why I stick to slides because I start rambling. But that's just a theory. So I would say, based on this, deja vu to you is what deja vu is to you. Your truth, what it is. That's just a theory.
Literally remember that moment.
Yeah, you do. It's like, I've seen this before.
Yeah, like you.
Mhm.
It's and you feel it. It's not just like, oh, this is familiar.
Then you start paying attention more.
That's the key. That's what at least that's what I learned about study. You start to pay attention because there's something you want to address from a spiritual standpoint happening or about to happen. And that's your trigger point, your signpost to be aware.
Yeah.
Kind of like when you get chills, somebody walked down your grade. You ever heard that one? I lost you on that one, didn't I? Had nothing to do with this teaching. But so what these texts offer is spirituality that honors mystery, silence, and the journey within. It's a forgotten wisdom that can heal the split between soul and system, light and matter, divine and human. Matter is what? We're all matter. That's what lower vibration creates matter at the bottom. And that's why they're saying we were trapped in this realm, which is ironic because if you ever read the lost teachings of the Law of One, the children of Atlantis, they reference a very similar aspect of how we're trapped. Now, I also learned the difference between soul and spirit. But as Sam and I have debated many times, well, not debated, we discussed. You know, kind of like we believe that Sumeria is the cradle of civilization only because we kept their math and stuff, because we know there was thousands of years before Sumeria existed other, you know, we're finding out new stuff. So yeah, they believe that we're basically trapped. But what I also learned is the difference between soul and spirit from the Gnostics' point of view. So this is Mark's interpretation. All right. Kind of like I told you earlier about the creation of the demiurge. See, not all entities, not all guides, not all masters ever walk this planet. You guys are brave. Look at what you're dealing with. being a spiritual entity, having a human experience means you're going to have human experiences. And that's the emotion, the heartache, the joy, the sorrow, right? Not everyone's up for that. So there's something, if anything, is empowering. Take that and empower yourself with it, because there's something about that. There's a strength in that, right? So I believe that when we decide to enter a body, right? Because I believe the soul's like the fascia in the body. It's the part that keeps the matter and the spirit combined. And it's like, from the record standpoint, it's the story of your soul from each incarnation, not your spirit. Your spirit, I believe, is your umbilical cord of perfection. But so what you do is, and it's just a theory, like when Sophia tossed it out, the demiurge, it's like we toss it and it's our soul. Because our soul's with us.
The spirit is the light.
Spirit is your divine, it's your divineness, your DNA. Now your soul is that also, it's almost like the demiurge, who had part Sophia, part chaos. So the demiurge isn't 100% evil or ignorant. It has both. So that's just a theory. And I got a little, screen. So I always tell people, I think the soul is like the fascia in the body that keeps the body and muscle, everything connected. Because from a record standpoint, at being the story of your soul's its first incarnation, when you're not in body, you don't need the records, right? Because they're to help you maneuver this realm. They're empowered. Just like the Gnostic writings is empowering. The journey is empowering. If you don't want to be empowered and you want to be religious, go to church. No one's going to judge you. Because I know everyone here has had moments. It's like people come in, they got the dark night of the soul. And then you got to break it to them. Okay, once you get over this, guess what? You're going to have another. Because you're having a human experience. If you just did one and you got it all, your ass would ascend. That's what I believe. Or go to India and be a guru. Like Yogananda. I really think. Never mind. That's another story. All right. So how do you read? This is where it gets really fun. It is not designed to inform the intellect, but to awaken the inner lives. All right. So Jesus said, let the one who seeks continue seeking until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed. When they are disturbed, they will marvel. When they are marveled, they will reign. And having reigned, they will rest. Holy shit, when I find the truth, I want to be disturbed. You can't read it that way. That's the intellect.
Well, and disturbed doesn't necessarily mean negative.
Yeah.
Disturbed is what you do when you dig an earth. You're disturbing the earth. It just means that it's not the
shaking the
same as it
foundation.
was.
Yeah.
But you can see, if you read that from an intellectual standpoint, you're like, what the hell oh my God. If I don't want to be disturbed, I don't want to find it. I like my peace.
Disturbed could be just awakening too.
Yeah. That's where down. That's the point is yes. But the point is not to read it that way.
Yeah.
The direct, the intellect. Don't read any of these writings that way. You can't. But when you read it, maybe read one. But it's not just what it's saying. What are you feeling? What energies are rising? What questions are popping up? Mine would be, what the hell is disturbed? Because you think about it, if you read it literally, and you're like, I got a pretty good life. Yeah. I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to be disturbed, so I'm going to quit seeking. Seek and ye shall find. It takes guts to seek truth. Because it's it's all inner work. Now, these classes, thing you read, again, I call them keys because they open up the doors. But literally, if we're all sitting alone and we had a running toilet and we each had our own island and we had enough food, you got to have a toilet. All right. You got to be sanitary. You can find truth. You don't need another person. But you can find truth even if if you're stuck and all you have is a King James Bible, you can still find your inner truth. because you already have it. You're just opening up doors for it to be released. Unless you really believe you were born of sin and not the missing the mark sin, the evil sin. All right. They weren't meant to be analyzed or attached in any academic way, which is great because, academics have been deciphering these since they got into museums. They're intended to be experienced, internalized, and remembered because you already got it. That's what they're saying. The Gnostic spirit invites you not to accept truth from external authority, but to recognize it through inner resonance. And again, resonance, in this case, what they're saying is gnosis.
Remembered. It just hit me in what context they're saying the same. It like just hit me. Like I'm thinking remembered, like you read something, you memorize it. I'm remembering.
They were against that.
Back.
Remember,
Like you already
right. You do not need to
It just, like,
recite
hit me
scripture.
with
You don't need to do 6 Hail Marys and pray
Yeah.
at noon and you're forgiving for whatever it is. No, there's no reciting. And it reminded me, I did a reading about a month and a half ago, and and it's not in details about the reading, but something about getting ordained. But her friend was like, "Oh, you got to learn scripture for that." And it was so cool because what came out was, "No, you don't." And the reason it's cool is that was before I started this. I was still in the overthinking, which I had to stop because it led me to overthinking. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
But I feel at home talking like this stuff, because this excites me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does it excite you, Rio? Hell yeah. All right. But again, a lot of people get worried about that external authority because all their lives, their mommy, their daddy, their Uncle Bob, whoever told them what to do. Okay. I like to say this now, and I refer to myself a lot in this. Okay. I had to realize this with the overthinking. It's time to shit or get off the pot. You sit on the pot and get hemorrhoids, life sucks. All right. If you're just mingling around and learning this, your mingling draws more question. But in a mingling mind, questioning equals defeat. It's like, anticipation leads to mental constipation. It also leads to disappointment. So that's why they're saying the first step, the journey's not an easy one because it's all you. You have to believe in you. Period. Because you already got your truth. No one can do it for you. Because guess what? It's going to happen again. That's free will.
Yeah.
Right.
There's more of them than us.
Well, not just that. What I'm saying. Okay. So yes.
I was gonna say, like, when you're saying nobody can do it for you, it's like having someone study for an exam.
Yeah.
That you're gonna have to take. Like
Exactly.
you can't just let someone else do all the work for you and you get the benefit of that. You won't benefit from it because you haven't put in the effort for yourself.
Yeah.
And if that is your path this life, no one's going to judge you because you'll get another opportunity. It's kind of like the laws of free will. If Joel sees me suffering and he knows exactly what I need to get through this, and he kind of does it for me, I get through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, I got through that moment. The universe is going to bring it right back in a different way, maybe a little stronger. That's why you also got to be careful interacting and interfering with others' free will, because if it's a lesson that they have to address, then they have to address it. Does that make sense? And so with this, though,
If you want the benefits, you want the energy, you got to put in the energy.
but I think this scares people because I think there's still that hidden fear.
Yeah.
What if I'm wrong? That's why I always tell people, yes, ma'am.
No, it was just it's childlike thinking too. Yeah, it's immature thinking, not childlike. Immature thinking. To have someone else do it for you, to feel structured, to feel like you are in a safe zone, and it definitely feeds into a lazy kind of mindset as well. But it's a very immature style of thinking.
Yep.
Is to go with what someone's telling you to do because, well, okay, we'll do that, instead of looking within, taking the time, seeking.
Kinda
It takes a lot more
easier to be
energy.
led than to lead.
Huh?
Where it's easier to be led
Mhm.
than to lead and do the work yourself.
Right. And, because you can if anything. That's why I like to say it. So there's a reason the word if is a word right in the middle of life. But if you surround every if with loving energy, you will have a good life.
Yeah.
But we often do. We want to be told what to do, especially, and for some reason, it only deals with things that, well, from my view, it's a lot of it's the spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
I know none of you as adults want to be told what to do.
Oh,
Well, you need to do this.
If it matters, yeah.
Well, but I'm just saying.
I was saying, like, when you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, like, I was never like that, like, where I was always wanted to somebody to tell me what to do. Obviously, my parents and stuff. But yeah, my parents, they used to tell me stuff, and I will be like, huh. But I always wanted to, like, learn the why. Like, why? Even when I joined the military, I always just ask my leaders, like, you want me to do this? Great, but why?
Mhm.
And then they'll be like, okay, read this text. And then I'll read it and be like, oh, okay, I understand now. I always wanted to know the why. And I always in my mind was like, when a lot of people say knowledge is power, like knowledge is not power. Because if you know the knowledge and you don't do anything about it, or you don't use it, it's not power. It's only power when you execute that knowledge.
And see, from a Gnostic view, they would say knowledge is ignorance, wisdom is power. I don't know. I just can't read.
No, I
don't know what
it
it-
said. They did
but
say
it-
that knowledge
makes
is like
sense.
evil or something.
No, but the reference is that knowledge isn't direct because knowledge is what you recite, you memorize.
Yeah.
How many of you? Okay, you're a Catholic, right?
No.
Can you recite? You were. What were you?
Christian.
But were you raised in a Catholic church?
Yes.
Can you recite Hail Mary?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they're saying. You don't have to recite anything. For Gnostic,
You have to do that.
no, you
Yeah.
did, and that was one of the big disagreements. You don't have to memorize or recite scriptures
Mm.
because that's knowledge, but it's not wisdom because you're just reciting.
But also the execution and the power that you're learning, like, the Gnostic, right? It's also when somebody confronts you with something and they trying to like guilt trip you, like you're doing something wrong, and then
Right.
you come up and say, "No, I'm not doing that wrong because this is what I believe in."
Yeah.
And that takes courage to stand up.
It does because they're going to judge you.
There are, yeah.
Matthew 7:1, judge it not, you be not judged.
Mm.
But I've learned in my order, judgment's a human attribute. What am I in order today? Well, you got to make a judgment, don't you? So it's almost like it's the subtle energies, but it leads to the bigger. Kind of like when I say, do you love pizza? Yes. Do you love anchovies? No, on your pizza. So you've already conditioned the word love. We do that. I mean, it's part of human nature. So it's all in text, but it leads to bigger things. So I understand judgment's just part of human. We're not. I was judging that play earlier. You're talking about Chisholm. All right. I mean, it's just human, but
it's right.
But in their reference, it's the hypocrisy
Yeah.
in the judgment saying, oh, you're wrong. You're damned for eternal damnation because you don't believe this or you're not doing it this way. And yet, wait, we're getting there. How to read. All right. So you're not required to read in strict order. I love this because I do not read in strict order. They want you to go where your soul takes you. Don't let that dictate you. Try flipping open and just see where you go. Now, some people, especially, I know we got English majors, people love reading about all this stuff. I get it. That could be hard. And if it's still you, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just what they're saying is it's not and doesn't have to be that way, right? Because as previously as they said, all right, so each major gospel, 4 in the Bible are very similar. You got different teaching, whatever, but you got the birth, life, and death. But in the Gnostic Gospels, no. But they are introduced with historical and symbolic context. Because again, you want to think of the symbolism as she did with the word disturbed. It doesn't have to be literal because they wrote in symbolism. Jesus spoke in symbolism, mysticism, all these things, because it's what's it mean to you. All right. Also, you don't want to read with intellect or just with. You want to read with the heart. Now, I know earlier it was not. So what they're meaning by intellect is that holding it down. Earlier I said, if you read one, what are you feeling? What questions are coming? So those are what they're referencing to your heart. Kind of like how Yogananda earlier referenced the quote, self-proclaimed atheist, but the language of the heart is they were very close to the divine because they looked out for humanity. So we were talking about that. Conclusions may not come, but trust that doors will be opened.
Oh, you know what it reminds me of?
Yeah, come.
Meditation.
Yeah, meditation.
There's something about like, yeah, that's what that reminds me of meditation. Conclusions may not come, but doors will be opened.
Because it's not about certainty, it's about awakening. So you become an active participation in your own growth. Isn't that fascinating? You become active in your own growth. Yes.
And what fascinates me is this idea of trying to, for me, speak for self, trying to get out of this intellectual framework and allow other things that work in me and through me, like what resonates, how am I feeling, allowing other things other than what I know, I think I know, and I have to know it, and because these words put together is knowledge of it. It's more of that's why that reminded me of meditation. It's like you meditate and get into that practice of meditation, whatever you're doing in there, even if you don't get a message later on when things get stressed out, somehow you're able to be calm. You know, you developed a skill that you didn't even realize you were developing when you were trying to find something else. So this is what reminds me of that and how we, are being encouraged to read this. It's not in the intellectual type of situation. It's more of the other.
I got you.
I have no words.
No, but it reminded me, and it says go, because it's how I wrote it. So think of the red pill, blue pill.
Uh-huh.
Morpheus.
Uh.
Right? So you had the red pill, opens up. It's a Gnostic idea. Or you can take the Orthodox approach, the blue pill. It's your choice. It's always your choice. And the one I always have to keep telling my son is that the beautiful thing about being human is you can have your choice. You don't have to start working out in January just because in, mid-December, that's when all the sales for the gym membership, because everyone wants a New Year's resolution. No. The thing about being human is you can decide to make a change or at least redirect at the drop of a dime. Boom. That's the beautiful thing. All right. And so another thing I love about this is the second bullet. None of these writings seek blind acceptance. No. If you want blind acceptance, go to church. They want you to dig into it and accept. But here's the thing. You may not agree with everything in it, and that's okay. Go with where you resonate. Go where the gnosis draws you. Because some of them are there's some, you wonder the symbolic, were they on something when they were writing some of these? I mean, come on. There's some wild stuff in some of these writings, which is fascinating, right? So it has to be, everything is inner. So that's the big thing, is everything. If anything, you don't think anything else from this, just know that truth is within you. Your truth is within you. And that's their big teaching. All right. You're a seeker, not of external certainty, but of inner coherence, logic that speaks directly to your own sense of truth. You are a rememberer. All right. The Gnostic vision does not measure spiritual growth by clarity of definitions, but by the depths of resonance. Again, if you read that verse logically, and I know I use the word logic, but the way we would read it, and we took disturbed for how we viewed the word disturbed, all right, then it would throw us off. And so it's not about, if you're opening and reading with your heart, then the different versions of disturbed come to mind and things start to open. But if you stick to the definition of the word, it's almost like you get You're building your own obstacle because you can't get past the word, right? Now, there's also a way that it's disturbing because you're addressing your ego. And when you address your ego, life sucks. But where's the one place the ego does not exist? Presence. Let's be present. All right. To engage with these teachings, to accept the soft, quiet responsibility of your inner listening. All right. So down at the bottom, again, they're not going to give you answers. Although presence, I did it right, is the answer. So I think I said that in the overthinking. I mean, if you boil it all down to presence, if you can be present, life's good. You're centered, you're balanced, you're in harmony. Easier said than done. But that's the beauty of the journey. All right. So early Christianity was marked not by uniformity. There was an extraordinary variety. We already went through that. The early camps packed by wandering teachers. See, wandering teachers, mystics, prophets, and poets. All these were, in a sense, the Antichrist to the Orthodox Church. Because according to the Orthodox Church, man, yes, man, even though you had nuts, I don't know what they did. That school that slapped me over the road. And we were, but anyways, you had to have a man tell you what was right, what was wrong. When you confessed, you had to come to them and call them Father. I never understood that. Trying to keep my language clean. So you see how sickening this is?
Yeah. It's doing exactly what it says. Don't worry
Right.
anybody else.
Yeah.
But yet the Gnostics, so you see, they were just like free.
Yeah.
And yet, but it's important, as Sam was hitting earlier, it's important to understand the politics of Christianity via Rome. Because after all those years of civil war, they wanted obedience. And by God, if we're having you as a religion, it better be obedient. So you got to get rid of the wild ones. Another thing they're not so keen on is rituals. Because again, I think what it is, and I know Young and On has also addressed rituals. And so the way I like to take it is, if ritual is important to you, then keep it. If you got a certain ritual that you do and it works for you, then based on the foundation of this information, then yes, it works for you and that's your truth. But a lot of times rituals do what? They create a public display. Ooh, look at me. Or, the last, what's it called? I forgot. The Last Supper, when you drink the wine. Communion. Thank you. Been a while. It's like a ritual. The early Gnostics did not have rituals. They almost it's not that they went against, it's their belief system. Because, by the way, if you also want to deep dive Gnosticism, look at the Essenes. And remember, Jesus was an Essene, also a Gnostic. Because Gnostics have not thought. The Essene is kind of like a sect. Even though it's considered a sect. But there's, was it Jesus the Nazarene or Jesus the Essene? Because the Essene also ties to Mary Magdalene. Okay, I digress. See, that's why I've got these people. I got a few minutes to get through this. All right. Others developed rich mythologies, got it. But each of the Gospels, each of the writings has a different focus. It's not regurgitation from a different point of view. And here's what cracks me up, is if they would only open up their mind. All right. None of the New Testament was written here. So if it's God telling you, it's a mystical experience. But see, it's only okay for them to have a mystical experience because they're chosen, right? Mm-hmm. Although I got to admit, the preacher's outfit, the carnival with the long, I thought I'd converted to a church just so I could wear that on Sunday. I mean, that's a cool outfit. You got some cool outfits. The priest outfit, the exorcist, with the hat, under the lights.
But if you have a mystical experience, then why?
Well, yeah. You see, if anyone else outside of them, no, you're not. Because I am the church. I'm the one that tells you. I can only have mystical experiences. You're a sinner.
You beheaded.
Right. Or you're deemed a witch and burn. which is sad because how many of those people had a mental illness? How many authors of the Bible had a mental illness? I don't know. But if you look at it, it's based on just a few people. Whereas this movement was a lot because it wasn't this foundation, this box that you had to walk in. They shared information. You chose your truth. They didn't tell you what was true. And that's what's so cool about it. So yeah, and these, unlike the Gospels in the New Testament, each of them have a different focus. Jesus is not a redeemer. He's a revealer. He's revealing you a path to awaken within. In Jewish, it would be Seth. Seth was the third son of Adam and Eve. All right. So hence the dogma. Why our product Delphi dogma? Because I think it's the dogma that keeps us ignorant. All right. So in this excitement, the Gnostics found their voice. Modern view, the Gnostic salvation was not a matter of sin or forgiveness administered by an external authority. Salvation was simply through remembrance. Do your laws not say, ye are gods? Jesus said that first. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Gnostics were pushing. You're divine. If you come from the source, you are the source. Mm-hmm. But you're trapped in this materialistic world. And what cracks me up, and hopefully I'm getting there. Again, the word of illusion, divine nature. We are talking about the presence of divine feminine. We are talking about how it was shaped by imperial politics, ecclesiastical consolidation, and theological exclusion. Have you ever read the Bible and then you go, what the hell did I just read? It kind of feels empty. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's what they're saying is there's so much availability today. You can read it, and yet you still could feel empty because it's not feeding the soul. Right. The soul is starving.
Unless you I come across like my algorithm is basically all like learning stuff. So I do come sometime across some stuff and I feel like, oh, and it kind of brings me back to like this here.
We're good. Yeah. No, it's excited because my stuff.
But yeah, most of the stuff you're scrolling, just empty. It's like you think about it like 5 seconds, and you just it's gone.
I didn't. No, you're right. But it's okay. So it becomes apparent to why traditional religion no longer resonates as it once did. Now I wrote here the Dwapara Yuga, but that's another day for another class. Y'all know what the Dwapara Yuga is? I know some of you do, so I talk about it. You know how you have the season of the equinox. All right. So in Hinduism, in 1894, Sri Yugaswar, who was Yogananda's teacher, he wrote the Holy Science, and he introduced the West to the yugas. The yugas are very similar to the season of the equinox, except there's 4 yugas that happen twice. And it's 12,000 years ascending and 12,000 years descending from consciousness. Ironically, Kali Yuga is the furthest from consciousness. And I said they both, there's 2. But in the Kali Yuga, they fall back to back. It's the only ones that fall back to back. And they are the furthest from consciousness. And guess what? Yeah. That's when the Abrahamic religions came to do, according to the Yugas. Now we've entered the Dwapara Yuga for the next 3,600 years. It's one of self-interest. Energy. So we'll identify new forms of energy. That's what they're saying. Self-interest is also, as we're sitting here, self-interest. Now, he did warn it could take humanity down a darker path if self-interest is driven by ego. But I like to look at it in a more positive light. Self-interest is when people started thinking about the dogmatic practices of religion in the West that we've been raised in. So we start to question. So it's falling apart. The institution's cracking. Scandals, hypocrisy, and dogma. Dogma, just if you don't know, is a principle or a set of principles laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true. I don't know if I said that right. But here's what cracked me up. All right, we know the scandals of the church, and that's not just Catholic Church, right? Usually when we say the church, we know about the pedophilia, the taking the girls, and then we're going to have illegitimate kids, and then tell them their baby died, and then they sell their baby in adoption, and they get money for the. We know all about that. We know all about Baptist preachers having affairs, right? And these are people. These are people of God.
They don't get punished. They get moved to
because
a
they're people of
different
God.
institution.
Right, right.
See, that's okay. If that doesn't make you say, WTF, well, then I don't know. Because they're men of God.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are sinners. And then the dogma. But here's what cracked me up. And it wasn't the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church, I swear to God, they already know. The big thing, whether it be to deflate, deter our view of Epstein or what. So President Trump is slowly, they release more overnight.
Mm-hmm.
You got pastors who are freaking out. What will it do to their faith? Well, here's the thing. I wrote this note. If what you say is true, then what's the issue? If one source created everything, then obviously that source can create extraterrestrials. Because if you're a spiritual entity having a human experience, by definition on this planet, you're an extraterrestrial. So how does that change anything? And yet the Protestant world is flipping out because they're afraid it's going to change religion.
I mean, we're ETs.
Right.
Exactly. There's other planets out there. When they look at us, and that planet over there, those were the ETs.
And then they probably look at it and say, damn, that's a violent planet.
Yeah. That planet itself.
They roll up their windows.
Right.
Love ours.
But my point is, you see, and again, because former Pope, not Leo, he said he would baptize. Now, granted, who says ETS would baptize? But I do believe the Catholic Church is already full aware. They're not freaking out on this. It's the Protestants freaking out. But why?
But why? There's evidence.
No, there is. But how is that going to crack your faith?
Oh, well, I can tell you that there's a huge swath of Protestants who think that ETs are demons, which is unhinged.
There's
as hell
also-
to me, but
There's also a huge swath of denominations that think that the whole universe is only 6,000 years old.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Nick had a teacher. Did your daughter have the same teacher? And the dinosaur bones were put here by Satan to throw us off.
Yeah, so there can't be ETs.
The teacher tell me
Okay.
I'm gonna get up and leave the
Here's what's funny. Miss Van's daughter, I said, we was saying, North Hardin Christian. We're both retired military. And so when you get to an area, you always look at the school,
that's what they
right? So at the time, you want to pick the best school.
We made sure
For your
we
child.
came.
And at that time, for us, it was North Hardin Christian. And I didn't even really start to change how I thought yet. But I did drastically later. And so you do it. And then it's such a small school that as they've been in there a couple of years, they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
All their friends are there. But luckily for both of our children, they didn't fall into their net.
Mhm.
But there's a teacher who said to our son the same thing Miss Mann just shared. The earth is only 6,000 years old.
Well, you got the Ark Encounter, you got the Creation Museum, and it's right here in Kentucky.
We should all take a road trip to the Ark.
Seriously.
they would kick us
And that's
out.
what they teach.
Oh my gosh.
I've been there before.
One of my neighbors was just talking about
So I've been there
It's
four
so
times.
weird they just went that out.
Hallelujah.
See, I'm
Is it?
But you see what I'm saying? They want that.
that.
I don't know if you know,
And it's
we're
fine.
homeschool.
Huh?
We just fit in with the typical homeschooler, so I can tell us that we don't want to go to the co-op anymore because of our schools.
My thing is like religion to me. I mean, there's a lot of good to it. There's also a lot of bad. Bad meaning there's a lot of confusion. But I believe that, like religion is, and especially these generation, like now, not us. It's like falling apart.
Well, yeah, that's what this is. It's cracking. That's what this is referencing. It's falling apart because of the scandal, the hypocrisy, and the dogma.
But it's falling apart. Like us, we were brought up,
Yeah.
believing in this. Now we are. All
That's why I said that. What part are you got?
Yeah.
Because with self-interest, and then it is cracking, but it's also because you've probably been here, like the old saying goes, it's not your first rodeo on this planet. So you probably had many times,
Yeah.
but you're starting to see through the veil.
Yeah. But not, I'm not saying not only our generation, the millenniums, the X and the Z's, all of these are thinking now. They're just
It's just get exceptionally antiquated.
yeah.
Okay, now here's something. This is just a common sense thought, or maybe you never thought it, but I have. So you take let's take the Inquisition part of the witching hour, or 3:15 in the morning, whatever.
Uh-huh.
History is forward, like Jesus died at
Is that what keeps waking me up at night?
Okay, but no.
And,
My point is, what if you live in a different time zone? So you mean to tell me the veil follows just like the time?
The time zones.
So who made that shit? The church.
Yeah.
But you see how stupid it is? Because you know how they say, oh, the veil is lesser on Halloween? Okay, I think this is the veil.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Knox are saying. The world is the veil. But I mean, if you ever asked that, I mean, I asked stuff like that. Like, we'll be watching something like some scary movies. I love scary movies. If there's the Catholic Church or Satan involved, I think it's the better movie. Can I just, because it's scary. I love that stuff. Because I don't believe in Satan. But anyways, I'll sit there and they'll say that. And I'm like, well, shit, what if you live in Central or Western
Or what if you live in Australia?
or Australia where the toilet goes the other direction? Does that mean the veil is at, instead of 3 a.m., it's 3 p.m.? I mean, what are we doing here? But that's how we're programmed.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But yeah, so I just, as I was building this, that popped up, and there was on my Flipboard a lot of articles, but I just pulled one because I was like, this is hilarious. The whole religion is going to fall apart if they announce there's ETs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a theory of Jesus.
What about all the ETs that we see in the rooms? Like,
Right.
Egypt,
Oh,
like, all these, what's going on with that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So many are walking away, some in anger from the church, some in sorrow, others just simple fatigue. So in all of this, obedience without intimacy does not nourish the soul, so the hunger remains. See, that's what they don't realize. These may all be true. They may be angry. They may be sorrow. They may be fatigued from the preaching, the hypocrisy. But bottom line is they're walking away because the soul is starving. And what's making it starve is your own gnosis, your own awareness, your own awakening that this is not true for me. Doesn't mean it's not true for them. And so they're walking away. It's just they don't know where they're walking to. Some of them. But you guys are. I mean, you obviously, everyone that's found, people think about, even with astrology and stuff, everyone that's walked away is finding a key, finding a tool, right? And that will eventually bridge to another. Now, they may become a famous astrologer in this life and it never bridges. They become very rich, have a nice car, and that's cool. They're following their dharma. And if you're following your dharma, you can't argue that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the Bhagavad Gita, the dharma, what you're meant to do. But they're also tools. So that's why you say, if you don't get it in this life, you're eventually going to get it. Everybody's going to get it.
It's like you'll remember.
Because see, then at least the question, the dialogue is, why am I here? Well, I believe we're here to fuse our spiritual and matter. Just like the avatars, except they came already that way. Whether it be, you want to call it Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, Christos, it's to bring that consciousness into this realm. That's why, even though it's hard, try sending a different energy to things you don't agree with. We've had this talk about that. And it is hard, because even I have a hard time with it. I believe that, they'll say that history is cyclic, because I believe we respond the same way we always do. We went into Iraq when bin Laden was in Afghanistan. We bombed Iran, probably because we believed Israel. And then the guy resigned because he said Iran was never a threat. Right? So we always respond the same way throughout history, and that's why it's cycling. However, if you see these things and you send it love, instead of letting it eat you alive, twist, try something new, because that's the way I believe it shifts. And believe it or not, it's harder than you think. It's hard. But again, you're not imperfect. Imperfect with apostrophe is I'm perfect, because you are perfect. At your essence, you're perfect. That's the spirit. Your soul knows this. And so that's why the soul hungers for this information, because it's deep within you waiting to sprout. Is there anything sacred that has not been? All right, so I'm going to end here, but here's the thing. And I don't mean to throw this on you, but I had this purposely designed for 2 months. Because in July, no, what month? May, June, July, I gave up my class for a shamanic journey and divination type thing. Which next week, if you've never done shamanic journey, it is awesome. Very visual. So,
And Holly's a great teacher.
yes, and she's a great teacher. But see, the last thing I want to end with also, is there anything sacred left that has not been corrupted? These are things that people ask when they're in church or when they're leaving because it's the foundation's crumbling. And my answer to that is yes, because sacred is within you. Only you can define sacred. But if you're an external person, or, who believes that you get, I got to be told what to do. What do I got to do to get to heaven? I want to walk the pearly gates, and I want to have my feet touch the gold plates on the road, because, the streets are paved with gold. I got some streets there. Yeah. In the mansion. Let's suffer here, so we have a mansion there. That's not living. That's asinine. That's crazy. Why suffer here for a mansion there?
Why ain't gold over there?
I don't know, right? It's pearly gates, Paul's going to let you in, not just taking a roll. Again, seekers seeking answers externally. That's what it all is. The only one that can define sacred is you. I mentioned that just earlier. Maybe you, it's a sacred man. Who am I to judge? But I did plan on this being for 2 months, and I know usually when I do that, when I did the whole self-realization, I lose some people. But the thing that you take away from today, because you already knew all this, take away when you read these books, I recommend reading a verse at a time. And you know what? Instead of, here's one for you, especially the wild ones who love to read stories. Right there. So
Where's the verse? Check.
why? Trust you. I always do that because I know I'm going to read what I need to read.
Dude, I'm telling you, your truth is wrong when it comes to that. I'm just kidding.
If that is your truth, and I respect that. My wife would agree with you and not me. She could drive her crazy. That's how I do it. I can't read a book front end. Unless it was like the Tao of Pooh, but those I have to. Because I'm like, you can't do a book club in the Tao of Pooh. And I started at chapter 4. And first hour, they're talking about the first 3 chapters. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So then I start winging stuff and pull it out of my ass, making stuff up, which I have, as a military, did a lot of briefings. I pull stuff out of my ass and make you believe it. It's a gift. Ask these two. They've got the gift too. It's a gift that we get, and a gift that you guys might have. It's called tap dance without tap shoes. But no, you're right. So I'm just saying, but don't read it intellectually. Empower yourself. Again, symbolism, mysticism. It was not meant to be see Dick, Jane run up the hill. You learned that in kindergarten. They would have kind of a whole different way to say that. Right? So you want to read it. And if you don't understand, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Resonate on it. Let the jello set. Because guess what? In 8 days, maybe in the shower, maybe on the toilet, maybe watering grass, I don't know what you do. Something may come to you. You just got to believe in yourself. And Sam and I, we're going to discuss our next several podcasts. We're going to be on Nag writings and the Nag Hammadi. My next several classes are going to be on the Nag Hammadi and then books with the Nag Hammadi. I love deep diving into the Gospel of Thomas. It's so beautifully done.
you were saying that this is going to be a two different. This is you're going to continue, but we're doing.
I'm going to
it
continue
in
this
July?
in June.
In
In July, I'm taking a break. So then the intent is starting in August, we start the Gospel of Thomas. And then we'll deep dive into that. And then maybe the Gospel of Truth, because, you know, Sam had a revelation of her own, bringing the truth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so when you read these things, like she sent a text the other day, she sent a reading, I swear to God, this is talking about reincarnation. Because she read it with an open mind and not verbatim intellectually. All right. Y'all can read. She already got the intellect covered. So now after that, let it go. Or read it intellectually and it confuses you. Read it with an open mind. But remember, don't forget symbolism.